Hello, my name is Andrew Harger, and I'm a divorce attorney in Chicago, Illinois. I represent people in the Chicago area in family law cases. I also assist and consult people throughout Illinois who are representing themselves or need assistance with one aspect of their family law case. In this video, I will be explaining how to prepare a financial disclosure affidavit. In all family law cases that include any financial issue, each party is required to disclose the following: their income, expenses, assets, debts, and other financial related items. The first method of disclosure is done through completing a financial disclosure affidavit. All courts in Illinois now use a statewide financial affidavit form that is available online. You can download a copy at my website. You can find a link to this PDF document in the comments below. Effective with recent amendments to the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act, significant penalties and sanctions may now be levied against litigants that intentionally or recklessly file inaccurate or misleading financial affidavits. It is therefore very important to complete the affidavit fully and accurately. Let's take a look at the blank affidavit and some general instructions on how to complete it. This is a fillable PDF form. The first blank area is for your case information. Select the county where your case is filed here. The case name, which is almost always your spouse's name versus you, or vice versa, goes here. The case number, which in Cook County, Illinois, is expressed as a year, the letter D signifying a domestic relations case, and the case number goes here. In item 1, you simply check the box to signify whether you're the petitioner or the respondent. In item 2, you fill in the date that indicates the date for which your affidavit is valid. Usually that's the day you're completing the affidavit. In item 3, you check the boxes for financial records that you are going to produce with your affidavit. These financial records support the information that you are including in the affidavit. Some records are required to be produced depending on the specific county court where your case is or will be filed. Each county circuit court in Illinois has different rules called local rules that require certain documents to be produced with the financial disclosure affidavit. In Cook County, for instance, Local Rule 13.3.2 requires that each party include with the financial affidavit copies of the party's last 2 years filed individual and business federal and state tax returns, most recent pay stub showing year-to-date earnings and deductions. If you haven't yet filed a federal or state income tax return for the prior calendar year, the last filed year's return shall be served along with W-2s, 1099s, and K-1s received necessary for the preparation of the prior year's return. Other documents you may want to include are as follows: bank statements, credit card statements, investment retirement account statements, etc. Generally speaking, you will want to provide a source document showing the value and date of value for any asset or debt that you list on your financial affidavit. Item 4. This is simply basic information about yourself: name, phone number, home address, and date of birth. Item 5. Here you include information about your relationship that is the subject of the family law case, whether you are married or not, which would signify whether this is a divorce or a paternity case, whether you are already divorced from the other party. That's a question because this form is required not only for family law cases with financial issues before a divorce, but also for subsequent litigation, including financial issues such as modification of child support or modification of maintenance. The last item on page 1 is a question about whether you currently live with your spouse. If not, you also indicate the date on which you stopped living together. Turning to the second page, item 6 simply asks whether you live with another adult unrelated to this case that helps pay your expenses. The most common situation here is where you remarried after your divorce and then there is a subsequent dispute about the divorce case, such as a modification of child support. In item 7, you list the children of the relationship, their dates of birth, and whether they live with the petitioner, respondent, or both. In item 8, you list whether you are employed, the name and address of your employer, and how often you are paid. The final part of item 8 is your gross income so far this year, which is most often found on your most recent pay stub. Item 9 asks for information regarding your tax filing for the prior year. First, the filing status: married or a joint return, married filing separately, single, head of household, or you simply did not file. Next is the number of dependent exemptions, which are listed here on most tax returns, followed by the amount of the tax refund, found on line 19, or the amount owed, found on line 22. Finally, item 9E asks for your gross income, which is listed on line 7 of tax form 1040. Item 10 asks whether you filed for bankruptcy in the last 5 years. And finally, on page 2 is item 11, which is the start of the income section. The income and deduction sections can be a little bit complicated. These sections ask for income and deduction information calculated on a monthly basis. In most situations, you can find the information you need on your most recent pay stub. If you're paid the same salary once per month, then you can simply use the information found on the pay stub without adjustments or calculations. If you are paid more often than once per month, then you must calculate the amount per month you are paid. If you are paid a variable amount because you are paid hourly or by commission, then you should calculate monthly averages based upon the last several months of your employment history. The first possible category is the most common: regular employment earnings. Next, there are entries for overtime, commissions, tips, and bonuses, all of which should be an average monthly amount. The rest of the entries for the income section are less common, but might be relevant to your case, so review them carefully. Section 12 is for deductions from income. In this section, you enter the deductions from your income for federal and state income taxes, FICA tax, Medicare tax, etc. These basic deductions can generally be found on your pay stub. The rest of the deductions listed in this section are less common, but you should review them carefully because they might apply in your case. Remember that if your pay is inconsistent, then you should also calculate a monthly average for these deductions. One thing to remember about this form is that there are a number of blanks that are auto-populating. In other words, these blanks are automatically entered by the PDF document based upon information you've entered in other areas. For instance, entering numbers into one or more income categories automatically calculates and populates the entry for total gross monthly income at the bottom of the section. The next section is on pages 4 and 5 and is item 13, monthly living expenses. This section is possibly the most difficult and, depending on the nature of your case, the most important section of the financial disclosure affidavit. For instance, if you are asking for child support or maintenance, formerly known as alimony, this is the section that is used by the judge to determine what your needs are in relation to maintenance or child support. If your spouse is asking for child support or maintenance, then this section is just as important to you because it sets out what you believe the financial lifestyle of you, your spouse, and your children was during the relationship. At some point, you may be questioned by the judge or an opposing lawyer about this section, which is why it needs to be accurate. Furthermore, if your total expenses are too high, then it may look like you're trying to inflate the number to try and get more maintenance or child support. If the total expenses are too low and you clearly spend more per month than shown on the affidavit, then you may be discredited in defending against your spouse's claim for maintenance or child support. Some of these expenses you'll know immediately. For instance, the amount of your mortgage payment or rent will, in most cases, be obvious and you don't need to do anything further. As you go past these fixed expenses, however, the expenses are a little less obvious. For instance, the next series of expenses is for the section associated with your home. The first listed here is for gas, and in this section, that means natural gas used in your home, not gasoline for your car. This is the first example of a bill that varies from month to month. You may have an idea of your monthly gas bill, but each month that number changes. It is more expensive in the winter when your furnace is running all the time, and less expensive in the summer. The best approach is to arrive at a monthly average. To do that, you can add the gas bills for 12 months and divide by 12 for a monthly average. And this example is exactly why this section is the most difficult to complete. To get an accurate number for just one entry, you'll need to review 12 monthly bills from the gas company, add the amount of each bill, and divide by 12. That's the only way to come up with an accurate number. Oftentimes, I'll see an opposing party who has completed this document, and each number in this list of expenses is a round number. For instance, the gas bill number will be exactly $50. The electric bill number will also be $50, and the cable number will be exactly $100. In these situations, I know that if I ever get that opposing party on the stand, that I will be able to effectively cross-examine him or her on how this document was completed. By the time I'm done with cross-examination, it will look to the judge like that person has just simply guessed at the numbers they used for the amount of the expenses. That obviously hurts that party's chances in looking like they did an accurate form. So it's not a good idea to guess. It is better to use a method that you will get an accurate figure even if it requires a lot of work to do it. You can also give all of the documents, bills, checking account statements, credit cards, statements, etc. to your lawyer who can do the work for you, obviously while billing you, to get the accurate numbers. In complicated cases, sometimes a divorce lawyer will advise you to hire a separate financial expert to review your documents and help you produce this document in a completely accurate manner. Either way, if you use a lawyer or a financial expert to do the work for you, it will likely cost several $1,000s to get an accurate disclosure statement completed. In some cases, that cost is justified by the amount of money at stake and the issues that are contested, even if you're willing to do the work yourself. But if you can do the work accurately by yourself, you'll save yourself a substantial amount of fees. Another consideration is that you can use footnotes and/or endnotes liberally throughout the financial affidavit to explain why you listed a certain figure or from where it was derived. You may consider including a general disclaimer that the financial affidavit is preliminary in nature, as discovery has likely not yet closed and your factual investigation is ongoing. Moving forward to page 6, item 14 is the debt section. Congratulate yourself when you've reached this point in the affidavit because the majority of the difficult work is completed. The remaining sections ask for current information, not historical information, requiring you to average expenses over a period of time. This first section refers to your debts. This doesn't include debts tied to your car, your house, or a fixed asset, which you might expect given the name of this section, but it's a little misleading. In most cases, the debts in this section are credit card debts and other forms of unsecured debt. As an example, you may have a Chase Visa credit card debt that goes in here. In that case, in this first block under creditor's name, write Chase Visa. In the next section, asking for the nature of the debt, include some description that generally describes why the debt was incurred. For instance, household expenses. Under amount owed is the total amount of the debt, and under monthly payment is the actual payment you make each month. If the payment is variable, you may want to average it for the previous 12 months. The next section, item 15, is the reconciliation section. This section should be auto-populated if the form is working correctly. Here, the form is auto-populated using the numbers we put in on the previous pages. In some cases, it may show you have a negative cash flow per month. This may or may not be accurate. It may also hurt or help depending on the issues in your specific case. If you have one, This is something to discuss with your lawyer. The next pages 7, 8, and part of page 9 are for item 16, the asset section. Before looking at the specific parts of this section, there are a few tips that will help you complete everything. Many of the items here can be completed simply by referring to an account statement. Refer to supporting records to verify the value of the asset and the corresponding date of the value. Some categories of assets, real estate, business interests, jewelry, etc., may not have an easily determined value. For those categories, it is okay to list the value as TBD or to be determined, or note that your investigation continues as to the particular asset. Note what assets may reasonably be considered your non-marital property, which may include property you owned prior to the marriage, property you inherited, property that was gifted to you, etc. You can refer to Section 503A of the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act for a list of what qualifies as non-marital property. You may also want to include a general disclaimer disclosing any accounts or assets held by your spouse in which you may have an interest. In subsection A, the bank account section, you list the name of the bank, the name on the account type, for instance, checking or savings, and the current balance as of the date on the first page of this form. In subsection B, it asks for information about stocks or bonds. This first section is for situations where you own stocks, but they are not held in an investment account, like at a Merrill Lynch or Ameritrade, for instance. But instead, you have the actual stock certificate in your possession, and the company sends information and dividends directly to you. If you do own stock in a traditional investment account, but not a retirement account, which comes later on this form, then the information goes in this next section. Under description of assets, list the name of the investment firm, for instance, Merrill Lynch. Then under owner is the name that's on the account, and the balance is the total current value of the account as of the date on the first page of this form. Subsection C refers to real estate. List the address of the property and the name on the title. FMV stands for fair market value, or the price for which the property would sell. You may or may not know this information, and unless you have a formal appraisal you'll use in court, it might be better off to leave this blank until you have a better idea of the actual value. Under balance due, you list the amount still owed, if any, on a mortgage associated with the property. Subsection D is vehicles and completed similar to the real estate. Subsection E is for business interests. In this section, you would list any business you own or own part of. The type of the business refers to the entity, such as a corporation, LLC, partnership, or sole proprietorship. The percentage ownership is your percentage owned. We see again here the FMV, and again, unless you have a formal appraisal of the business, then it is probably better to leave this blank or TBD for to be determined for the time being. Subsection F refers to life insurance policies. The type of policy is generally either whole or term. The death benefit is the amount to be paid to the beneficiary upon your death, and the cash value is the amount you would receive for a whole life insurance policy if you were to cash it out immediately. Subsection B is where you put retirement accounts. Under type of plan, you specify whether it's a pension, 401k, IRA, etc. For some types, the fair market value is just the value from the last account statement. For a pension, once again, unless you have a formal appraisal, then it is better to leave this blank or to be determined. Subsection H, income tax refund, Simply ask for basic information about your tax refund or amounts owed for your last 2 tax returns. Subsection L refers to any other lawsuits or claims you have pending. This would be an unusual situation and is not typical. Subsection J refers to valuable collectibles, and I would also include jewelry here. Subsection K refers to the transfer or sale of assets in the last 2 years. If you sold a valuable asset in the last 2 years that you would have otherwise placed in this section, complete an entry here. Otherwise, leave this subsection blank. The final section, item 17, of this form relates to health insurance. You indicate whether you have health insurance, the name of the company, the type, deductible, etc. Section 18 is checked yes if you need to add another page to complete one of the earlier sections. Otherwise, it is checked no. Finally, you must sign and date the form. Before you sign and date the form, however, review it for accuracy. After your first draft, set the financial affidavit aside and revisit it a day or 2 later to check it for accuracy. This is an important document, and if your case ever proceeds to trial, you will be cross-examined on it. Filling out your financial affidavit is a tedious and time-consuming process that can feel overwhelming at times. However, you must take it seriously. Keeping the things I discussed today in mind will help assure that your financial affidavit is done correctly the first time around, which will help facilitate a timely resolution of your case. A link to my website is below. Should you decide you need a lawyer to represent you or to assist in your self-representation, my contact information is listed on my website. If there is any aspect of your divorce or family law case that is contested, you should consider hiring a lawyer or at least consulting with one.